All right, so the numbers out of Alberta are actually up a little bit in all categories. Active cases at 701, hospital 55, 13 in the ICU. They tested about 6,000 people yesterday. But again, there's nothing to be overly worried about. There is a very big story that came out yesterday that may or may not provide a little more context into this whole numbers things. Um, it is kind of odd though that Alberta is the only province that is experiencing this. I think there's a little more to the story that the government isn't letting on about. I mean, you look at Ontario, 100 new cases. Again, so they're down by a lot. Like again, Ontario's got what 3 times the population, and they had like 15% more cases. Like that doesn't make any sense. So I think something a little more is going on, and the whole mask thing again that has so very little to do with it. It's not even funny for the simple reason that masks aren't like I've said a million times, but masks aren't this end all be all. Like um, for starters, most of the people wearing masks have no idea how to properly use them, like literally no idea. And I mean, for the simple reason, it's very confusing on how you actually use a mask properly. So again, that's something to point out too, that most of the people wearing masks don't actually know how to use them properly. And if you don't know how to use them properly, then they literally are useless. Um, and like I said, the other thing too is that masks decrease oxygen flow, which isn't good for you. It's going to down regulate your immune system. And something to point out here that I heard the other day that I think is a good point is that going into this winter, we're going to have a population that is increasingly susceptible to sicknesses in general. Because so many people are walking around wearing masks, because so many people are too paranoid to go out in public, people's immune systems are going to be more compromised than normal. And if there is a second wave, even if the second wave is no worse than the first wave, combine that with the flu and cold season and all that stuff, we could see another, a lot of people die again. But again, it's not going to be anything to do with lockdowns or any of the garbage that the politicians would have you believe. It's as much to do with the lockdowns causing negative damage as positive damage again. So it's something I wanted to point out. The numbers out of the states are so-so. The cases were pretty high again. But again, there's a very big story that I need to talk about to provide some context. The death numbers were up a little bit, but they're still under 1,000. Again, they're still out there. I mean, it's still over a month now since there's been a day over 1,000 die. So again, that's very good news. And again, people hear that number and they think that it's this massive amount, but I believe the average, I think there's about 7,000 people that die on average in the average day in the States. So, considering the fact that like 1 out of 7 of those is from this, it's not really that bad. Like, come on, people. But again, I'm kind of going through this because I wanted to get to the main story here, and the main story is Florida hospital admits its virus positivity rate is 10 times lower than first reported. Now, I'm sure a lot of people have probably heard about this story, but if you haven't, go search it up, read into it. The gist of it is that um, a hospital and other hospitals have been rumored to have been inflating the numbers, and not only have they been inflating the numbers, they've been inflating the numbers by quite a bit. So it's not just a little bit. The one place literally was inflating the numbers by 10 times. Again, so this just flies in the face of people thinking that there's this big, massive outbreak now and they have to lock down, they have to force people to wear masks. No, they really don't. The reality is that the numbers are a flat out lie, and for anybody questioning that, I would stress the fact that the place literally admitted that the numbers were inflated. So again, there's no debunking that. They literally admitted it. So don't even think about the debunking it or any fake news garbage. No, they literally admitted it. And the fact that the mainstream media isn't talking about it is just more proof that it probably is true, right? Because if the mainstream media was talking about it, they would be talking about it in the context of it being fake news and it's not true. But because the mainstream media isn't talking about it, it's clearly because it's true. And because it doesn't fit their narrative, they don't want to talk about it again. So it just makes perfect sense. But again, this is a massive story, like I said, for the simple reason that the numbers are inflated. And this is probably something that's going on in Canada too. Like it probably is something that's going on in Canada too. The government has been lying to us this entire time. I don't think it's possible to ascribe just general stupidity to the government because, like I've been saying, someone like me with no medical expertise would have handled this situation better. So again, there's no way that they're more incompetent than I am, like some guy on the internet is. There's no way that they're more incompetent than I am. I'm no expert. So the simple solution and the most likely solution is they are relatively smart, but they're just lying to people. That is the most likely solution. Um, and I think it's rather obvious that there's ulterior motives going on here. I mean, the government of Canada just announced they're extending CERB again. I think that there's a pretty clear push to implement a UBI, even if they don't call it that. And not only that, they'll probably use the excuse of the whole virus thing that, oh, we need to do this. And they won't even mention the word UBI or the concept of it. They'll just use that as an excuse to implement it. Again, so that there's many ulterior motives. I mean, the government's also trying to pass more draconian laws. I mean, you look at even Alberta, they've tried to pass, and I think they did pass some draconian laws that the NDP idiots are finally catching on to that I pointed out 2 months ago. Again, so there's a lot of bad stuff that's going on, and the reality is that this isn't some terrible life-changing pandemic. I mean, we'll be looking back on it, it will be life-changing, but not because it was so significant, but because the government was lying to us the whole time, and they brought on horrible economic damage for no apparent reason. Like I say, like very little apparent reason, basically. So again, it's and the other thing too is that this stuff is so predictable. Like I'm so tired of being right at this point. Like it's not even funny. It's just so tiring. Like, and here's the thing too is that you would think that the pro lockdown crowd would be tired of being wrong. Like they've literally been wrong about everything. Like literally everything. And not only that too, most of it's like undeniable, right? Like they were wrong about the whole mask thing. I mean, now they're wrong in the other way. Rather than just admitting there's a clear middle ground when it comes to masks, their idea behind masks has went from don't wear a mask, they don't work, they're completely useless, to now you have to wear a mask or we want to throw you in jail or at the very least fine you. Again, there's a clear middle ground. Again, it went from borders don't work to now if you're an American in Canada, people support, destroying your car and throwing you in jail. Like again, it's like, come on, people. There's a clear middle ground here. Again, it's just insane. It's just insane. Like I say, it's just kind of tiring being right so often and trying to warn people, but yet I still see idiots in the comments sometimes that still think that I'm wrong about something when really haven't been wrong about anything. And it's not because I'm super smart or someone special. It's just that I'm pretty good at figuring out who knows what they're talking about. And again, someone who has half a brain knows that the best predictor of the future is the past. And what has the past shown us is that people have continuously, time and time again, overestimated the severity of this whole virus. And the other thing that we've been seeing time and time again is that the government has lied to us to try and provide proof to fit that narrative again. So I guarantee you that there will be more stories that come out like this of the government and or hospitals that were lying to make this situation look worse than it was. I would bet every dollar I have there will be more stories somewhat similar to this because, and again, it's not because I'm someone who's super smart or an expert, it's just that I've seen that time and time again throughout this situation, the government has lied to us. Like time and time again. So of course there's going to be more stories coming out about them lying to us. Again, so this is from the Sorry Not Sorry on Twitter, and they say, I'm confused. How does adding 350 billion in debt, having the highest unemployment in the G7, and also being the only G7 country with a credit downgrade translate to Justin doing an incredible job? Now, again, I don't like to hate on Trudeau so much. The problem is that he just does such a terrible job and he puts his foot in his mouth so much that it's impossible not to talk about it. Like it's literally not impossible, or it's not possible to not talk about it. Again, they brought on way more debt than they should have. They should have I mean, we should have been open long ago. Like I say, that if you're going to have this whole CERB thing, it would have been okay, 2 or 3 months. That's the only amount you get. It's all said and done. There's no extension. Like at the very least, that's what they would have done. But no, they're extending it through December now, I think. Again, so the whole thing, it doesn't make any sense. Like the government intentionally crippled the economy for no apparent reason, and then now they're running massive deficits when they told us all along they weren't going to do that. Like, come on, like it's just insane. Like it's insane that um, that people can think that somehow they're doing a good job. Now, again, I don't care what side of the political spectrum you're on either. Like, I really don't. And the other thing too is that we had a credit downgrade, and what people don't know is that the credit downgrade things are almost always overrated. I mean, you look at the U.S. recession in '08. They had the same credit rating we do right now when they went into recession in '08. So again, we've had countries that have went into massive recessions with credit scores exactly where we're at right now. So people who think that Trudeau's doing a good job, like it's absolutely laughable. Like it's absolutely laughable. And this is from Paul Joseph Watson, and he replies to a story that says anti-pedophilia protesters clash with Antifa during March for Innocence rally. I don't know where that was exactly, but probably in Europe somewhere. But he says, imagine protesting against an anti-pedophilia event. And again, this is where this is where Antifa's at. That again, that they are protesting against things that are you'd think would be universally accepted, but apparently not. So again, it's just people who think who believe in Antifa and support the concept. Like I don't have words for you. Like I really don't. Anyway, so that's just something I wanted to bring up. Just again, not that we didn't know Antifa was crazy already, but it's just another example of it. And the last thing I wanted to talk about here is something from Larry Elder here, and it is kind of satire, but he says, will there ever be a vaccine for white guilt? Now, again, this is probably one of the most destructive things in society nowadays, and for the simple reason that people refuse to call a spade a spade. Like, there's no such thing as white privilege, there's no such thing as systemic racism, at least in large part. The reason why there's differences between the races is that the differences between the races um, can exclusively be explained by differences within IQ and differences within the choices that people make. I mean, I've pointed the stat out a million times, but if you are a black person and you graduate from high school, you get and keep a job, and you don't have kids outside of being married, the likelihood of that kid, when you do have a kid, um, growing up in poverty goes down by 80%. 80%. Again, so if they actually cared about racism and all this kind of stuff, they would be talking about that kind of stuff, but they don't want to for the simple reason that, again, Black Lives Matter has made it very clear that one of their goals is to destroy the nuclear family again. So if you actually care about all this kind of stuff, you don't say stuff like that. Like I really don't care. So that's something I just wanted to point out. So basically, that's all I wanted to talk about today. If you liked the video, make sure to hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. Check out my PayPal and email. I got linked in the description. Again, I appreciate any donations, but the very least, just hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. And last few things, check me out on PayPal, or not, check me out on Twitter, Parlay, and BitChute. I appreciate if you follow me on those other platforms as well, because it's only a matter of time till YouTube bans me.